In the 15th year of Cheongdok's reign in the Republic of Korea, specifically in the Hangang region, a mysterious murder occurred, and the body was found in an alley next to a grand palace. There were no clear marks on the corpse or any clues pointing to the perpetrator, with only a few rumors circulating about the victim. It was known that the potential suspects in the area were three infamous detectives renowned for their cruelty and nicknamed the Three Dogs due to their notorious reputation. One of them was called Ironheart, famous for his strength and persistence. At that time, the murder case had been solved, and the detective who cracked the case gained increased fame along with a boost in his spiritual energy due to his good deeds. The young man felt exhausted after spending a long time playing an investigation game he was deeply passionate about, to the point that he began to suspect he had overindulged in playing it. The game's concept revolved around a young detective who tracks down crimes and draws conclusions from scarce information. It stood out uniquely among modern games, but the detective realized he had taken his involvement too far. But the young man had crossed the line to the extent that he could identify culprits just by seeing their fingers. Despite the enjoyment, he felt saddened knowing that a game of such quality would likely never be made again. As he reflected on the matter, he felt puzzled and slightly disappointed by the idea that a game of this caliber might never be found again. He asked himself as he walked whether there was another game currently worth his attention. At that moment, an angry voice called out to him, causing him to turn around in surprise at the strangeness of the situation. An old man appeared before him, scolding him harshly, saying he had granted him a prestigious position, yet he didn't seem to care or listen to him. The old man continued addressing him angrily, asking if Yun had any idea how many young men dreamed of being in his position in Hangang. Suddenly, the old man called him by the name Bukeo Yul, which greatly confused and shocked Yun. Yun couldn't understand any of it, and extreme confusion showed on his face at what he was hearing. While still disoriented, he suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a crowded street with people rapidly moving around him. At that moment, Yun realized that the Buko were famous detectives who pursued criminals and captured them under judicial orders, and he was shocked to discover that he had actually become one of them. The old man approached him, who turned out to be named Bodo, and spoke to him about rumors of his special psychic abilities, which had led to his promotion. Yun responded calmly despite his internal astonishment. Then Yun was surprised by a direct request from Bodo asking him to use his psychic abilities to help the city solve an important case. Yun regained his composure and quickly recalled how skilled he had been in investigative games. He began wondering whether the skills he mastered in the game could be applied in real life. He gradually began to remember the backstory of the character he found himself in, someone without a home or family who became a Butchu detective after solving several minor cases. This was his mission after his promotion, and Yun realized that Bodo was his superior in this place, holding the title Bodo Sok, which resembled the role of a modern-day detective. Yun hesitated and felt anxious because he understood that failure would mean becoming poor and homeless. He decided to focus and listen carefully to what Bodo had to say. In a moment of concentration, Yun began recalling a previous case called the missing candelabrum case. The memories became clearer, and Yun remembered very precise details that had been vague. Suddenly, Yun told Bodo that he clearly remembered that case. Yun explained to Bodo how he had solved the case of the missing candelabrum and began recounting the details with confidence and clarity. Yun started explaining the case details, highlighting that the key to solving it lay in closely examining parts of a lamp used during the incident. He spoke about the traditional lamp method where it is filled with both oil and water, with the water preserving the oil from being consumed too quickly. Yun added that the owner of the missing candelabrum, Mababa, was in the habit of working at night beside the lamp while preparing tea leaves, which made the lamp's light extremely important. Yun explained to Bodo that the criminal had previously tampered with the lamp by removing the water and reducing the amount of oil, causing it to go out quickly and allowing the theft of the candelabrum to occur easily. Yun concluded his explanation by affirming his suspicion that the culprit was the servant responsible for preparing the lamp in the morning, which greatly impressed Bodo and earned Yun high praise for his exceptional investigative skills. Yun continued his conversation with Bodo, who asked in surprise whether Yun's mysterious psychic abilities were rooted in Buddhist magic or if they were a natural gift he was born with. At that moment, Yun felt at ease. He remembered solving a similar case in the past while playing his game, yet he was still amazed that the game's skills were proving useful in the real world in such a way. Then Bodo firmly stated that he trusted Yun and declared that the time had come to solve their official case, which made Yun feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. Bodo explained that the case involved a man who was the master of a palace and had been killed by stabbing. The details of the case were clear. The corpse of a man had been found lying near a pavilion inside the palace, and the only wounds were stab marks on his back with no other injuries. Strangely, the palace appeared unusually quiet. Bodo and Yun arrived at the palace gates, and Bodo told Yun they were in the right place to investigate the murder of the palace master. Bodo shouted loudly, announcing his arrival to take over the case and demanded the gate be opened immediately. However, after waiting, it became obvious that the palace residents were unwilling to open the gate, which made Yun uneasy. When the gate finally opened, an arrogant man named Bodo-sa appeared, mocking Bodo for his delay and inability to solve the case quickly. Bodo-sa rudely explained the reason for his interference in the case, claiming that he had come at the judge's request, which greatly angered Bodo. Bodo exploded in rage and ordered Bodo-sa to leave immediately, accusing him of misusing the judge's name. Yun noticed that Bodo-sa was highly skilled in martial arts, which both impressed and alerted him at the same time. Bodo-sa boldly challenged Bodo, stating that he had already gathered some special guests to witness how he would solve the case. While Bodo was enraged, Yun sensed that Bodo-sa might have intentionally stirred up the situation to distract and disrupt their investigation, and he calmly wondered whether Bodo was confident in his ability to solve the case. Bodo-sa began presenting his analysis of the case in front of everyone, explaining that the killer must possess advanced combat skills based on the footprints and precise wounds found at the scene. He added that the killer had used his superior martial techniques to swiftly eliminate the palace master and then easily leapt over the wall to escape. But Yun was unconvinced by this story and questioned whether the analysis really made logical sense. Bodo-sa announced that the main suspects in the case were three well-known figures in the Murim world. There was Byung Illinois I, known as the Iron Heart Sword. The suspect was Jong Illinois, one of the three red-faced ghost warriors, infamous for his terrifying skills. The suspect was Dan Bong Ho, a mysterious fighter feared by many in the region. This raised the question from Bodo as to how Bodo-sa had managed to gather such dangerous individuals so easily. Bodo-sa continued and said he had gathered them all here because he was certain the killer was among them, specifically pointing to Jong Illinois as the prime suspect. This accusation angered Jong Illinois, who defended himself strongly, asserting his innocence and claiming he was elsewhere at the time of the murder. Bodo stepped in to defend Jong Illinois, stating that he clearly wasn't the killer and wondering how someone from Jong Il's kind could even work for the true perpetrator. Bodo-sa quickly clarified that he also ruled out Byung Illinois I as a suspect as his reputation and martial status would not allow him to commit such a crime. At that moment, all eyes turned to Dan Bong Ho, who felt enraged and provoked by the accusatory glances and implicit suspicions, and he burst out angrily, rejecting the implied accusation. Dan Bong Ho explicitly asked whether they were truly accusing him, which heightened the tension in the air. At this point, Bodo realized that Bodo-sa had deliberately created the situation to provoke Dan Bong Ho into an emotional or violent reaction that would either prove his innocence or confirm his guilt. But Dan Bong Ho remained calm and confident, radiating immense spiritual power, and firmly declared that he doubted the validity of Bodo-sa's claims. The other investigators around him felt the rising tension, and each was ready to use their strength to defend themselves if necessary. Those nearby clearly sensed the worsening situation, and their expression showed signs of readiness for a battle that could break out at any moment. But Yun raised his hand, confidently declaring that there was no need for this confrontation because he firmly believed that Dan Bong Ho was not the real killer. Bodo-sa exploded in anger, harshly scolding Yun for his boldness and reckless interference in such a dangerous situation. Even Bodo himself was surprised and concerned by Yun's uncalculated boldness, wondering silently what was going through Yun's mind to make such a hasty conclusion. Suddenly, Bodo recalled the strange psychic abilities Yun possessed and decided that maybe he should trust Yun's instincts this time as well. Yun felt intense pressure and realized that now he had to actually prove his psychic abilities in front of everyone. He began to regret his impulsiveness in voicing his opinion without prior planning, but time wasn't on his side and he had to act quickly. Still, Yun knew he had one advantage: his prior knowledge of some details from the game he had played, even if reality was far more complex. Yun looked cautiously at everyone. It was clear they were all waiting for a convincing explanation from him. He decided to channel his self-confidence to turn his expectations into reality, even though he wasn't entirely sure of the accuracy of the information he had. At that moment, Yun suddenly felt a sharp, unexpected headache, which made him question the source of this strange pain. Suddenly, vivid images and events related to the crime scene flooded his mind, and he began seeing scenes as if from someone else's memory. Yun was shocked by the clarity of these strange images, as if information was being broadcast directly into his mind. He realized that the images flooding his mind contained precise details, such as the criminal's footprints and the victim's foot size, and he felt as if he was inspecting the scene up close. Yun was amazed by this detailed information, unsure where it was coming from. Bodo-sa interrupted angrily, sarcastically threatening to tear out Yun's tongue if he remained silent without offering a clear explanation. Yun quickly pulled himself together and calmly asked everyone to listen carefully, promising to provide them with a logical explanation of what happened. Bodo protested angrily again, but Byung Illinois I stepped in and asked that they allow Yun to speak in peace. Yoon composed himself and began by criticizing Bodo Sa's theory, explaining that no matter how skilled the killer was in martial arts, it was impossible to leave just a single trace while escaping like that. Byung Illinois 1 tried to object hesitantly, admitting that perhaps such a leap could only be done successfully once in 10 attempts, which increased everyone's doubts about the previous account. The scene turned into a flurry of questions about the investigator's skills, and all eyes shifted to Yun, who posed a clear challenge regarding the possibility of jumping over the wall without leaving a trace. Yun confidently explained that using advanced jumping techniques should inevitably leave marks on the wall from the force of the push. It was unavoidable. He then turned his gaze to everyone and asked them to verify for themselves, questioning whether there were truly any marks on the wall as Bodosa had claimed. Byung Illinois 1 looked at Yoon with deep admiration, beginning to feel that Yoon wasn't just an ordinary detective, but someone with a truly exceptional skill. In that moment, Yoon thought to himself that perhaps he really did have unusual psychic abilities that granted him such clarity of vision. The crowd cried out in shock that they found no trace on the wall to support Bodo Sa's version of events, causing chaos and astonishment among them. Doubt and confusion grew in the place as no one could comprehend how Yoon had noticed such a subtle detail despite just arriving at the scene. Byung Illinois 1 stepped in once more, calling for calm and urging everyone to keep listening to Yoon. Perhaps he truly had a logical explanation for what really happened. In the end, Byung Illinois 1 asked Yoon a direct question. If the killer hadn't entered through the wall as Bodosa claimed, then how did he enter the pavilion? Yoon sighed in relief when he noticed that everyone had started to believe his analysis, so he continued his explanation with greater confidence, announcing that he would present more evidence. He pointed to the footprints near the crime scene, explaining that the size didn't match the victim's feet. In fact, they were significantly wider and longer. Yoon confirmed that the footprints belonged to another man, taller and heavier than the victim, which meant someone else had been there and they needed to identify him. The attendees wondered what the footprints could mean, and suspicion began to grow that someone had entered the palace again after the Lord's death. Yoon explained that the killer had to be someone close to the late Lord, someone with the power, opportunity, and motive to benefit from his death. With full confidence, Yoon declared that this person was none other than the palace's head servant. Everyone was shocked when Yoon directly pointed to the head servant who showed visible signs of shock and anxiety. Yoon explained that this man had worked in the palace for a long time and had grown resentful of the Lord's treatment. Perhaps he had been planning the crime for a long while. He knew that killing the Lord would bring harsh punishment, so he waited for the right moment to execute his plan without raising suspicion, choosing the time when the Lord was alone in the pavilion. Yoon imagined how the servant had snuck in during the dark of night and, with complete silence, approached the Lord with a knife, using his solitude to deliver a fatal stab. The scene was vividly painted in the minds of the listeners who imagined the moment of the murder in detail based on Yoon's narration. After finishing his explanation, the head servant clung to his last shred of hope, shouting that it was all nonsense and couldn't be proven by footprints alone. But Yoon responded that it would be easy to confirm since the footprint would match only one person's foot, the head servant's. That was undeniable. Yoon escalated things further, asking the head servant in front of everyone about a strange event on the day of the Lord's death when the servant personally prepared the tea, which was unusual. Yoon presented additional evidence that the Lord usually took the tea himself and that the servant had on that day slipped a sedative into the cup before serving it. Because the substance was placed in the cup, the remaining water wasn't affected, which explained why no trace of poison was found when the leftover tea was examined. In a moment of anger and despair, the head servant snapped and attacked Yoon, screaming and calling him insolent for exposing him in front of everyone. But Yoon stood his ground, pointing out that even though the Lord was defenseless, the clean method of the kill showed that the murderer was skilled in martial arts. At that moment, Yoon felt the same sudden headache return, which disoriented him as he tried to defend himself. The head servant seized the opportunity, drew a dagger swiftly, and lunged at Yoon with murderous intent, shocking everyone. Yoon couldn't dodge the attack in time and realized his reaction was far too slow. In a critical instant, Dan Bong-ho appeared and intervened with incredible speed, saving Yoon from the fatal strike. A sharp cry rang out in the room as Dan Bong-ho blocked the blow instead of Yoon, to the utter astonishment of everyone present. Dan Bong-ho turned his head calmly, blood dripping from the servant's arm, and told Yoon that he would never forget this favor he had done for him. Yoon responded with an awkward smile, trying to appear confident despite the tense moment, and said he could forget it. Dan Bong-ho approached Yoon and apologized for his earlier behavior, explaining that he had never meant to harm an innocent person. He had only been trying to find the real culprit. As for Jong Illinois, he muttered sarcastically about those who had doubted him. But deep inside, he admitted he would remember the favor and offered to help Yoon if he ever needed it. One of the other fighters spoke with admiration about Yoon's psychic abilities, noting that he had managed to protect an innocent warrior through his intelligence. In the end, Bodo told Yoon that the judge had been worried about this investigation, but now that the results confirmed the culprit wasn't one of the fighters, that concern would fade. Amid the calm that gradually returned, Byung Illinois one left with the others, while Yoon remained in place, thinking about what was yet to come. At the farewell moment after the investigation ended, Bodo placed his hand on Yoon's shoulder with a smile and assured him that he would rely on him from now on, which filled Yoon with pride and confidence. Yoon replied with a serious smile, affirming his full readiness as he gazed into the horizon with determination and resolve. But reality was different from the game he was used to. While rewards there were symbolic, a Bogway in this world had to formally confirm the investigation before a judge. Once the case was validated by the judge, Yoon received a silver coin as a modest reward. It marked his official achievement. Bodo told him not to expect many rewards in the future as there were no set rules in this field. Yoon agreed with a faint smile. Yoon was pleased with how Bodo's stance had changed and noted that his own reputation had grown, while Bodo-sa was disgraced in front of everyone. Bodo began lecturing Yoon about how a Bagway must live with integrity, only accepting money fairly and directly from those involved in the case, and he went on and on until Yoon began to feel bored. To change the subject, Yoon asked Bodo about his psychic powers and the headaches that accompanied them, trying to understand the source of the pain. Bodo replied that such matters fell under the domain of monks or sorcerers and that a regular doctor wouldn't understand. He was just a warrior with limited knowledge. He mentioned an old saying, talent shortens life, which suddenly made Yoon anxious, prompting him to ask whether it was truly dangerous. Bodo seemed hesitant to answer, but eventually admitted that most who possess psychic abilities had short lives or tragic ends, especially when headaches were involved. Yoon began imagining himself surrounded by dark shadows as if these powers attracted sinister spirits, and he felt a chilling fear about the mysterious fate awaiting him. He wondered to himself whether this was really just a game as he had initially believed and wished that his appearance in this world had been simpler than it turned out to be. Bodo offered partial reassurance, saying he would consult some specialized healers, though he couldn't promise anything, which slightly increased Yoon's worry. Suddenly, Dan Bong-ho appeared before them, walking confidently. Yoon was surprised by his unexpected return, but Dan Bong-ho calmly said he hadn't come for revenge, but rather to repay a favor, pointing out that neither Yoon nor Bodo had accused him. Dan Bong-ho looked at Yoon and asked if he had been experiencing frequent headaches, shocking Yoon, who hadn't expected anyone to know such a detail. Dan Bong-ho took Yoon on a quiet walk and told him that he knew the cause of the headaches, which made Yoon question how much he really knew. Dan explained that Yoon didn't seem aware of the full extent of his abilities, so he decided to explain, and Yoon gratefully agreed. He asked Yoon if he knew the concept of the Dantian, which made Yoon fall silent, unsure of the details. Dan explained that the human body has three centers, the essence at the bottom, energy in the middle, and spirit at the top. He added that warriors gradually unlock these centers, but opening the upper center, the spirit Dantian, is extremely difficult. And if someone succeeds in opening it, the build-up of mental energy in the brain could lead to madness or a mental breakdown. However, Dan explained that there are rare individuals born with the upper center already open, and they can naturally accumulate spiritual energy. He pointed out that Yoon was one of those people. He had been gathering extraordinary spiritual energy without realizing it. Yoon asked in astonishment whether he had truly been using this energy all along without knowing, and Dan confirmed that it was likely the case. Yoon suddenly realized that solving cases was granting him good karma in the form of spiritual energy accumulating within him, just like in the game. He wondered if this ability came from the upper Dantian, and Dan confirmed that most people with such powers had their origin there even though Yoon didn't have pure spiritual energy. Dan then began explaining the kinds of abilities that can emerge from the upper Dantian, such as mind reading or communicating with spirits. He concluded by saying that Yoon's spiritual eye allowed him to see what others could not, an ability so powerful it could have killed him if overused. Yoon asked Dan Bong-ho to explain more about the abilities he had mentioned, wanting to know whether they were the reasons that would lead to his early death. Dan began explaining the ability to read minds, stating that it was one of the 6 known spiritual powers and often appeared among monks or people of high awareness. However, Dan clarified that even the most skilled users of this ability couldn't see everything precisely, only fragments of intentions or lies. It wasn't the absolute power many imagined. Yoon asked about the difference between the ability to talk to spirits and the spiritual eye. Dan replied that the spiritual eye, also called the Eye of Insight, was a rare power that enabled its possessor to see the truth. Dan added that this eye could reveal hidden matters, but to this day, no one truly knows how it works or what its limits are. It is surrounded by mystery. Yoon began connecting the dots and said that his closest ability seemed to be the spiritual eye because when he focused on something, he could see it clearly as if penetrating to its essence. Dan told him that very few people in the martial arts world truly understood the upper Dantian or spiritual powers and advised him to study ancient books to learn more. Yun then asked about that phrase Dam had said earlier, vomiting blood and dying. Dam answered that his body was weak and untrained in martial arts, so if he kept using his spiritual energy, his body would collapse. Yun was shocked and began to imagine himself surrounded by spirits, crying out in anguish at the thought of paying for his ability with his life. He asked Dam if there was a way to survive. Dam replied that if he wanted to stay alive, he would need to learn martial arts and open his lower and middle energy centers. Yun shouted in frustration, saying he hadn't expected that survival required becoming a fighter. This meant beginning a tough training journey. Dam reassured him that he seemed to have a basic foundation in martial arts, but his current ability was extremely limited. Yun asked if he could look at a training manual, so Dam handed him a booklet used by rookie police officers, warning him not to show it to other martial artists. When Yun saw the booklet, he felt disappointed by how basic it was, thinking that the fact it was handed out to everyone was a sign of how weak its content must be. He grumbled, wondering if this was really the martial art that would protect him from death. But Dam told him that despite its simplicity, it was stable and safe for gradually accumulating energy. Yun asked how effective the method was, and Dam replied that it was slow, but at least it would allow him to start forming his internal energy. Dam agreed to help him train using that method for now, and Yun began to wonder if this martial art would be enough to protect him. Dam answered frankly that the art was harsh, but better than nothing. Yun took the booklet and began to feel the weight of responsibility. Yun attempted the training for the time. He felt a faint flow of energy inside his body and realized that at least he had taken the correct step. Dam taught him that the level in the martial world was to master a single technique, advising him to focus on it and train until he perfected it. Yun asked how long it would take to reach the level of a class martial artist. Dam replied it would take a year, then corrected himself, saying the real time was 10 years, assuming Yuan had talent to begin with. Dam decided to demonstrate the move of the Weehawk martial art, asking him to focus only on form and style at this stage. Dam showed the move with incredible speed using powerful spiritual energy that amazed Yun with its speed and precision. Dam explained that full understanding wasn't required right away, just to watch it repeatedly as much as possible until the technique was imprinted in his mind. Yuan made a promise to himself this time not to lose focus and to do everything he could to understand. He focused intensely while watching Dam's move and finally managed to glimpse the path of energy flow through the body. He suddenly cried out that he could see everything clearly, how Dam moved his energy and executed the technique, and he felt a new sensation in his head. Dam was surprised and jokingly asked if anyone actually wanted Yun to copy his techniques. If someone catches you, you might get stabbed in an alley and die, which caused Yun to panic. Dam added that the world of martial arts was harsh, but if Yun mastered the use of his spiritual energy alongside martial arts, the intensity of his episodes and headaches would decrease. Yun stood with focus, trying to draw out his internal energy as he had seen during Dam Bong Ho's training. It was the time he attempted to perform the move himself. He raised his hand and took a deep breath, trying to stimulate the energy flow in his body as Dam had done, repeating to himself that he could bring it out. At last, he shouted with determination, "Come out," trying to force the energy from within outward with all his willpower. But instead of feeling empowered, he began to sense something strange seeping out of his entire body as if he were being drained from the inside. Yun was startled when Dam suddenly appeared behind him and struck a pressure point, causing him to collapse to the ground, completely immobilized. He hit the ground, groaning in pain as blood began to drip from his nose, while Dam Bong Ho looked on in astonishment at what Yun had done. Dam told him he had used energy from the upper Dantian center, and this type of energy flow could harm the body if not controlled properly, so Dam had to stop him with a pressure point strike. Dam explained that combat energy must be drawn from the lower Dantian since it is designed for use in martial arts, unlike the dangerous upper energy. Lying on the ground, Yun asked if it was normal to be able to use energy that easily, and Dam replied that it was because his upper center was already open. Dam reassured him that the injury wasn't serious, but warned him not to use his power again until the injury fully healed. While tending to Yun, Dam wondered how much energy Yun had stored in his upper center, because even after the pressure point strike, energy was still leaking out unnaturally. He noticed that Yun's hand was still trembling, meaning the energy was still trying to escape as if his body was naturally built to continuously gather energy. Dam thought to himself that Yun was quite peculiar, but also lucky to have survived an internal explosion this time, and he warned him against being reckless in the future. He told Yun to focus on simple training and calmly accumulate energy and not to rely on his upper center anymore until his body became stronger. Dam added that once Yun mastered the basic martial art, he could then search for a more powerful technique that suited him better. Yun asked where he could find a better martial art, and Dam replied that he could save up to buy a martial manual, find one by chance, or inherit one from someone. Yun nodded in agreement, showing clear understanding of what he had been told. Dam thought to himself that Yun possessed a rare talent. His ability to understand martial techniques just by observing them was truly a divine gift. He added that if it weren't for the weakness caused by his upper center, Yan could have been a direct rival to the heirs of the great families. By the end of his thoughts, Dam realized that helping Yan develop his power was no longer optional. It had become a mission that must be completed. Several days later, Yan was walking through the city with Dam, appearing in a good mood as they chatted about life and upcoming missions. But Dam warned him not to openly boast that he was being trained by someone, as that could attract trouble from high-ranking fighters. Yan bowed deeply and thanked Dam for his teachings, feeling profound gratitude for all he had learned from him. As he walked away, he looked back and smiled, saying to himself that he had learned so much from Dam in just a few short days. While walking through the market, he began to notice crowds of people around a food table, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He tried to quietly slip away when he recognized someone among them, but the man immediately called out to him loudly. Yan suddenly found himself surrounded by several colleagues and soldiers who made a scene upon seeing him, making him feel awkward and exposed. Yan explained that the young man was the nephew of their chief and had recently started working with them as a police officer at the request of Chief O, but he spent all his time eating. Yan was shocked to find that his colleague hadn't paid for the food again, justifying it by saying that police protect the people, so they shouldn't have to pay. Yan felt embarrassed and began to sense the merchant's gazes piercing through him as if everyone was silently accusing him of theft. Yan joked, asking if Weio intended to cross to the other side, but Weio responded in a confused tone, surprised by the question as if the idea had never occurred to him. Then O began explaining to Yan about Vanlu, saying it was a place located in the middle of the market filled with street vendor stalls. In the market, Yan listened to his colleague explaining that the Van Nu area was the most prosperous part of the city, home to the most famous shops and merchants. Yan asked his colleague why they hadn't visited Van Nu even though it was part of their patrol route. His colleague responded with clear concern, saying the people there were thieves and dangerous. Anger was evident on Yan's colleague's face as he described the residents of Van Lu, saying they had no respect for the police and would even attack them if they tried to intervene. His expression showed signs of a bad past experience. Yan insisted that they needed to check the place despite the risk, but suddenly they heard a loud voice announcing that no one would be allowed to leave until the missing silver was found. Yan turned toward the source of the voice, feeling uneasy, and realized that something had gone wrong in the area. His colleague quickly whispered to Yan to hide his badge and pretend they weren't there at all, but Yan asked why, surprised. His colleague explained that some thieves had stolen money, and if they failed to catch them, the merchants would complain to the judge, which would cause serious trouble. They quickly rushed to hide, the situation growing increasingly awkward as they tried to avoid being noticed. Yan innocently suggested that they try to find the thief, but his colleague replied sarcastically that finding a thief in this market was never easy. He explained that the people who worked here were professionals and wouldn't steal in an obvious or clumsy way. Otherwise, the money would have been found easily. Yan and his colleague began to quietly make their way out, but the official on site noticed them and stopped them, demanding their immediate assistance. Yan's colleague was visibly shocked, displaying signs of frustration, while Yan remained composed, trying to think of what they should do. Yan's colleague tried to avoid this situation with clear hesitation, but Yan told him that they were cornered and had no choice but to handle it. Yan reassured his colleague and asked him not to worry. He said he would personally handle the case, wearing a calm smile that reflected his confidence. Yan stepped forward and asked the official with confidence for details about what had happened. The man sighed in frustration and said the matter was complicated. The official began explaining that the silver had been stolen from Zhejiang, a bank where money is stored and lent out. He added that each month, the amount of silver is recorded precisely, but this month, there was a clear shortage. The staff and guards lined up, and the official was extremely angry, asserting that the thief was among them and had to be uncovered quickly. Yan's colleague was surprised by how cold the storage room was and joked sarcastically that stealing money from here required real courage because of the freezing temperatures. Yan quickly explained that the cold was due to a special security system called a formation, which prevents intruders and creates strange conditions. The official confirmed Yan's words, adding that the Jew family who created the formation had already apologized for the side effects. Yan asked the official if anyone else had approached the storage area, and the man answered that no one but him ever got near the place. Yan continued by asking about the guards, and the official said only the guards were allowed to enter to move the silver. The official firmly stated that the guards were searched very thoroughly, including full-body inspections, making theft nearly impossible. But Yan confidently disagreed, stating that the thief was definitely one of the guards. Yan then asked a very specific question, whether any guard had entered the storage room carrying a water bottle, which surprised the official. The official answered hesitantly that it had indeed happened, but the bottle had been thoroughly checked and shaken, and nothing was found. Yun skillfully explained that the guard had used the cold of the storage room to freeze the silver inside the water bottle, causing the silver to stick to the sides and not move during inspection. The official was shocked by Yun's clever deduction and immediately ordered his soldiers to head out and search the home of the suspected guard. The official thanked Yun sincerely and expressed his amazement at how quickly he had solved the mystery. Yun humbly replied that he had simply used his spiritual ability. This caught the official's interest, and he immediately asked Yun to use that spiritual power to deal with the intense cold in the storage room, which was causing many problems. Yun laughed and said he wasn't a sorcerer or a monk to be able to fix such things, but the official gently insisted that he give it a try. Yun felt obligated to try, so he agreed with a bright smile despite his inner hesitation. He began focusing deeply in order to control his spiritual eye and directed toward the problem. Yun moved steadily toward the storage room and resolved to focus only on seeing what he wanted when he wanted. Information began flowing clearly before his eyes as names and descriptions of stored items appeared, like the firebox and the glowing night pearl, among others. Yun was relieved to notice that he didn't feel a headache this time since he had managed to control his power briefly. He also noticed that his ability was becoming more detailed and refined. In a sudden moment, Yun discovered that the protection system, the formation, guarding the storage, had a clear crack or malfunction. Yun suddenly felt a strong surge of cold energy heading toward him, and he tried to resist it with all his strength. He felt a massive wave of cold energy piercing his body, making his hands tremble as he tried to control the situation. Yun was surprised when he realized he could actually control the energy coming from the formation, and he began to think this might be related to his upper Dantian center. He decided to seize the opportunity and forcefully push the cold energy away, focusing all his strength on the task. In a critical moment, Yun successfully pushed the cold energy away from him, causing a powerful burst to fill the area and leaving the official stunned. Yun had successfully controlled the energy, which amazed everyone and left the official and his colleague looking at him with shock and admiration. The official asked Yun with concern what had caused the strange sound, and Yun politely apologized, slightly embarrassed. The official was pleased that Yun had resolved the problem and said he hadn't expected things to end so quickly. Yun felt great relief. He had feared the official would be angry at the violent energy release, but the positive reaction calmed his nerves. The official continued to praise Yun, saying that even formation specialists hadn't been able to solve the problem, which made Yun feel slightly embarrassed. Yun politely thanked the official for the praise, but mentioned that excessive compliments made him a bit uncomfortable. The official reassured him that he wouldn't share the details with anyone and would simply say that Yun recovered the stolen silver. The official offered Yun a reward as a token of gratitude, but Yun politely said he was only doing his duty and didn't need a reward. Yun's colleague quickly stepped in, saying it would be inappropriate to refuse a reward and encouraged him to accept it. Yun recalled Bodo's advice and told the official that perhaps a good martial arts book would be the most suitable reward. This clearly surprised his colleague. The official immediately agreed and told Yun he would find the best book possible for him, while his colleague was disappointed, having hoped for a drink instead. At that moment, Yun felt like he had narrowly escaped danger this time, but he realized that he urgently needed to learn powerful martial arts quickly to avoid trouble in the future. Suddenly, their thoughts were interrupted by someone rushing in, shouting that there was an emergency, requiring the official's immediate attention. The official quickly turned and asked the man what the issue was. The man responded nervously that a guest had arrived from Jekmayo in Danju, which alarmed everyone. Yun, his colleague, and the official exchanged anxious looks, realizing that something serious was about to happen. The guest Juak arrived from the Jekmayo in Danju family, one of the most prestigious and powerful families in the world of martial arts, and everyone immediately felt tension and anticipation upon his appearance. His family was renowned for its great influence and long-standing expertise in formation arts, and his mere presence was enough to instill a sense of awe in the place. But despite his high status, Ji seemed deeply upset and shouted loudly, expressing his anger at himself over an inappropriate mistake he had made. His assistant looked at him in surprise at his sudden outburst, while Gok continued to worry that the news might spread and harm his family's reputation. Gok then turned to his assistant, asking about the delay in being received. The man apologized awkwardly and explained that a theft had occurred in the storage room, which caused the delay. Gok was shocked to hear about the theft and became visibly concerned about the possibility of a flaw in the formation. He thought to himself in horror that a thief getting in because of a formation failure would be extremely dangerous, not something that could simply be brushed off. At that moment, the official arrived with Yun to greet Gok. The official greeted him with clear respect, while Gok felt something strange about Yun's presence. Yun held Gok's gaze steadily, making Gok feel that Yun had the aura of a leader or commander despite being just a regular investigator. Gok was startled by his own strange thoughts and nervously asked himself why he would think that about someone like Yun. He asked the official anxiously whether the formation had actually failed, but the official quickly reassured him that it was still functioning properly. Gioke then asked whether the thief had been caught during the act. The official replied that he was captured later, thanks to Yoon's efforts. Gioke didn't seem entirely convinced, while Yoon could feel his analytical gaze and realized Gioke had doubts about the official's version of events. The official assured Gioke that they had identified the root of the issue and resolved it, which surprised Gioke and made him insist on learning the exact details. The official confidently explained that there had been a crack in the ice stone used in the formation and that they had consulted a skilled Taoist to fix it. Jiak immediately demanded to see the Taoist expert again, showing unusual interest in the matter. He explained that there might be deeper aspects the Taoist himself hadn't noticed, which caused Yun to observe the conversation silently and attentively. Jiak was overly grateful when Yun told him he would help, which surprised Yun and made him puzzled by the exaggerated gratitude. The official agreed to GAHK's request on the condition that the Taoist status be respected. GAHK promised that immediately. Yun silently wondered why GAHK was so interested in the Taoist, but said nothing as he continued to watch. Yun stepped forward and examined the crack again, while Gioke nervously confirmed that he really hadn't noticed it. Gioke seemed extremely embarrassed and wanted to leave quickly to avoid further discomfort, especially after the official requested immediate repairs to the ice stone. Yun tried to ease the tension and reduce the awkwardness by quickly complimenting Gioke's skill, which gave him some relief. Gioke was very pleased with Yun's compliment and again promised to reward him for his help, which left Yun surprised by the exaggerated reaction. The official thanked Gioke and told him they would contact him if any future issues occurred. Gioke promised to remain in the area to assist them. Unexpectedly, Gioke asked Yun to accompany him to the inn where he was staying, which clearly surprised Yun. When Yun hesitated, Gioke insisted, saying he wanted him to come quickly and assured him it wouldn't take much time. Yun followed Gioke quietly, wondering about the reason for this sudden invitation. Despite his suspicions, he didn't sense any ill intent from Gioke. Yun silently wondered, could Gioke himself have sabotaged the formation? But he decided to wait and not jump to conclusions. Gioke suddenly tried to justify himself, saying the reason for his urgency was that he hadn't been able to book a room elsewhere, which only increased Yun's surprise and confusion at such an unnecessary explanation. Yun walked with Gioke toward the inn, observing the place and realizing that it didn't seem like a suitable place for someone from a prestigious family like Gioke's. He silently wondered whether this was a deliberate choice by Gioke. Yun smiled and politely remarked that such a humble place suited Gioke's modesty and simplicity. Gioke felt pleased by the compliment despite his embarrassment. Giok thought to himself that Yun was quite good at compliments and even wished he could hire him to work for his clan. But before he could finish the thought, his servant came running toward him. The servant cried out in alarm, announcing that a serious problem had occurred. Gioke asked in confusion what the problem was, and the servant shocked him by saying that the money pouch in the room had completely disappeared. Gioke shouted in anger, saying the pouch was definitely stolen during his brief absence, and grew even angrier when the servant appeared confused by the situation. Giosi rushed to the innkeeper and loudly ordered him to summon all guests staying on the second floor immediately. The innkeeper obeyed at once, and when Giosi asked if anyone was missing, the man replied that no one was. Everyone was present. Gioke then asked about the guests on the first floor, and the innkeeper said that only a boy working as a helper was there since it was a quiet time. Gioke felt some relief, realizing that the theft had occurred recently and the thief hadn't had a chance to escape. Suddenly, of the guests appeared, angrily asking why they had been summoned so abruptly. Gahk spoke firmly and announced that he was from the Jikmyo and Danju family and that his money pouch had been stolen and the thief was still in the building. He declared confidently that he would find the thief immediately. Shortly after, his servant reported that they had searched everyone's rooms, but the stolen money had not been found. Gahk stood in confusion, realizing that the thief must have been clever enough to hide the money well. One of the men nervously suggested that the thief might be someone highly skilled who managed to sneak into the room, but G quickly dismissed the idea as nonsense. At the same time, a mysterious figure was observing the situation from a distance. Giosi was certain that one of these people had become greedy after seeing his luxurious clothes. Giosi announced to everyone that he would begin identifying each person one by one and was confident he would expose the thief. The suspect stepped forward, a seller of writing tools who carried bundles of brushes and ink sticks, and clearly explained his identity. The suspect introduced himself as a night guard who had come to visit a relative. He had only a few simple items with him, like knives. Then the suspect stepped forward, a GI sign, artist, Jisoo entertainer. She explained that all she carried with her was a single dress and some cosmetic powder, nothing else of note. She said she was there to meet her lover and showed calmness and clear confidence. Gioke asked her about the identity of this lover she was waiting for, but she refused to reveal his name, claiming it would upset him. Gioke felt that she was indirectly threatening him when she said that knowing her lover's identity would bring him trouble. The Gisang smiled quietly with a calm yet defiant expression, which made Jahook feel irritated by the way she was dealing with him. At that moment, the Gisang calmly said she suspected someone else among them, which caught Jahook's attention, and he asked her who it was. She immediately pointed to Jahook's own servant, saying he was the most obvious suspect. This shocked everyone and deeply stunned Jack. Jack exploded in anger, strongly defending his servant, insisting that the man had been with him since he was a child, and flatly rejected the accusation. The Gisang suggested, as tension escalated, that they call the police to end the ongoing dispute while Gioke stood there with a mysterious confident smile. Gioke turned to Yun and began studying him calmly. He asked Yun why he was staring at him and whether he suspected him as well. Yun politely apologized, but Yun surprised everyone by accusing the blacksmith, explaining that he was thinking about where this man could have hidden the silver. The blacksmith looked very nervous due to Yun's direct accusation and stared back at him with obvious confusion. Yun pointed to the blacksmith's hands, noting that if he were truly a blacksmith, his fingers would be covered in metal residue, but his hands were clean, proving he was lying about his identity. Gahk was deeply surprised by Yun's keen observation and wondered to himself why he hadn't noticed that earlier. He was impressed by what he saw and began wondering if what Commander Gong had said about Yun was true and not just exaggeration or lies. As Yun stood confidently, everyone wondered if this young Bagui was really capable of identifying the thief with such precision. Suddenly, Yun remembered that the night guard had earlier been helped by the servant, Jim Sui, which startled him. Yun explained that Jim Sui had seen the servant leave the room and might have secretly collaborated with the night guard in the theft. He cleverly added that the thieves may have thrown the stolen money out the window to be picked up from outside, suggesting this wasn't their time working together. Yun visualized the entire situation, imagining how the plan had unfolded between the guard and the servant, confidently confirming his suspicions. He approached the servant who looked speechless and firmly asked him whether his theory was correct. The servant couldn't deny the truth. In a moment of desperation, the servant tried to run, but Juak immediately stopped him, pointing his sword at him and warning him not to move. Suddenly, the night guard exploded in fury and began shouting threats at Yun, shocking everyone with the strength he displayed. Yun quickly realized that he was facing a fighter of a higher level than he had expected, yet he remained calm and composed. The guard lunged at Yun with fierce aggression, roaring that he would kill him while everyone watched the situation unfold with tension. Yun observed his opponent's movements with great precision and could clearly see every motion the guard made. He skillfully dodged the guard's attack, which enraged the attacker, who accused Yun of getting in his way. Yun watched his opponent intensely, relying on his spiritual vision to anticipate the next moves. Based on those predictions, he moved the table and chair at just the right moment, successfully disrupting his opponent's rhythm. Yun realized that his spiritual ability allowed him to clearly identify his opponent's weak points without suffering the usual headache, giving him even more confidence. The guard shouted in even greater rage, calling Yun just lucky, and launched another violent attack. But Yun concentrated hard and spotted a clear weakness in the guard's movement, preparing to take advantage of it. In a swift motion, Yun decided to use only his lower internal energy to respond to the attack. He launched a decisive strike with great force, channeling all his focus into defeating his opponent in a single blow. The guard staggered back in severe pain, and the signs of victory appeared on Yun's face, who felt joy at the success of his plan. Yun stood victorious, staring at his defeated opponent, clearly and confidently declaring his success. Gahk approached Yun in visible amazement and asked him what kind of martial art he practiced, noting that he had never seen anything like it before. Meanwhile, the servant who had helped with the theft sincerely apologized to Gahk, deeply ashamed of his actions. Gahk spoke to Yun calmly, saying that Jim Sui had been so clever, it made uncovering the truth difficult. But the important thing was that the money had been recovered. In the end, Gahk gave Yun a reward in recognition of his efforts and handed him a piece of silver with a gentle smile, affirming that he truly deserved it. Yun bowed deeply to Gahk, expressing his gratitude and embarrassment over the situation. He felt deeply indebted to him after everything that had happened. Afterward, Yun apologized to the innkeeper for the damage to the table and chair caused during the fight and kindly offered financial compensation with utmost respect. The innkeeper initially refused to accept the money, but Yun firmly insisted, saying he needed to make up for the losses since the customers had left due to the commotion. When Gahk saw what was happening, he asked in surprise what Yun was doing. Yun simply replied that he was distributing part of the recovered money as compensation for the damage. Gahk chuckled quietly and told the innkeeper to return the money to Yun, stating that he would personally cover the compensation. He added that he had never met a Bagui like Yun before. At that moment, someone calmly asked Gok if there was a person named Kyo, which piqued Yoon's curiosity and left him slightly confused. Suddenly, a man appeared in the center of the inn, standing with great confidence and immediately drawing everyone's attention due to his strong presence. Jiuk was shocked and loudly exclaimed, "Bing Hyun." Yun quickly realized that this was an important and well-known figure. The man turned out to be Bing Jo-sun, the head of the renowned Bing family in central Hebei province, known for his immense strength and high status. Bing Jo-sun walked toward them confidently and asked what had happened at the inn, surprised by the chaos he found. Gok tried to explain the situation briefly, saying that the blacksmith and the servant had conspired to steal the money pouch. Bing Jo listened calmly. Bing Jo laughed heartily and said cheerfully that he didn't know anything about the matter, which helped ease the tension in the room. Gok approached Bing Jo and introduced Yun, saying that thanks to Yun, the thieves were caught. Bing Jo expressed his admiration for Yun. Yun stood quietly beside Gok, surprised by the sudden arrival of someone of such high standing, while Gok began to quietly wonder whether Bing Jo had come because of the notorious thief known as the Divine Thief with the White Face. Bing Jo smiled happily and announced that Miss Tang Ling had arrived with him, which surprised both Gok and Yun. Gok then explained to Yun that he probably hadn't heard of the famous thief known as the Divine Thief with the White Face, a mysterious figure known for legendary heists. In the past, this thief had become infamous for stealing rare and valuable items, causing great disruption in the martial world due to his unparalleled skill in stealth and theft. He was known for his bold and confident style, managing to steal precious artifacts from highly secured locations without ever being caught. However, 5 years ago, the thief was involved in stealing a valuable item from one of the major families, which led to a rumor about his death and mysterious disappearance. Despite the widespread belief in his death, recent rumors suggested he was still alive and had stolen several secret martial arts manuals. The reappearance of these secret books caused widespread chaos as fighters from across the world began frantically searching for them. Gok quietly remarked that strange as the rumors were, there were clearly people who enjoyed stirring chaos and watching others in turmoil. Bing Jo agreed, laughing, and said that as odd as it all seemed, anything was possible and that many of his friends were excited about the story too. Then Bing Jo turned to Gok and asked for his help in investigating the truth behind the rumor, relying on Gok's status and capabilities. Gok agreed quickly and with great enthusiasm, feeling proud and confident that he had been chosen for such a mission. Bing Jo turned to Yun with a smile and told Gok that this clever investigator might be very useful to them in this endeavor. Gok eagerly told him that Yun was extremely intelligent and possibly had unique spiritual abilities as the ancients used to describe, so bringing him along would be a great idea. Yun hesitated inwardly. He wanted to meet strong fighters to raise his level, but he felt uneasy about the idea of entering a world full of greedy warriors competing for such treasures. In the end, Yun decided to politely and respectfully decline the offer. He explained to Bing Jo and Gok that as a police officer with national duties, he couldn't abandon his responsibilities easily. This only increased their admiration for him. Gahk continued to praise Yun in front of Bing, affirming that he was a rare officer who refused bribes and even used his own money to help poor merchants. This made Yun feel embarrassed by the idealized image Gahk was painting of him. Bing expressed great admiration for Yun, saying he had never met a policeman like him despite having dealt with many. Yun thanked him modestly and awkwardly. Suddenly, Bing decided he would personally go to the chief of police to request Yun's temporary assignment. This unexpected decision shocked Yun. Bing praised Gok once again, saying he considered him his personal Ji-han, a man of great wisdom. This made Yun even more humble and he smiled with embarrassment. Elsewhere, some men were nervously observing the scene as Bing arrived with Gok and Yun at a special location where Bing's friends were waiting for them. They finally reached a house that looked far more luxurious than Yun had expected. Bing told them his friends were inside waiting. Upon entering, the attendees greeted Bing with enthusiasm and joy, calling out to him warmly. Some of them whispered, wondering why Yun had come along, mocking that he seemed to have no friends. But Gok defended him, saying that Bing may have sought the wisdom of the Jogi family, which Yun belonged to. Meanwhile, Yun stood quietly and tensely among the assembled fighters who openly questioned why a police officer was among them. Bing quickly clarified that Yun was an exceptionally talented officer with extraordinary abilities, possibly fit for a top leadership role in the country. This only made Yun more embarrassed. However, some attendees criticized Yun's previous words, considering him bold for questioning Bing's orders, which made Yun feel like he was walking on nails under their angry gazes. Yun understood from the overall atmosphere that the people present were from the most prominent and prestigious families, Bing's true circle of friends. At that moment, Yun noticed someone special among the attendees from the Tang family, one of the 5 great clans, which caught his attention sharply. Ji Yuk, meanwhile, was gazing at Miss Tang Ling with clear admiration, and Yun quickly realized the reason behind Ji Yun's dreamy expression. Another person caught Yun's attention, someone sitting quietly but exuding presence and power, prompting Yun to wonder who this important figure was. Yun quickly realized that the calm woman was from the Bing family herself, perhaps closely related to Bing Ju. Bing smiled at Yun and confirmed she was indeed his younger sister, impressed by Yun's quick deduction. Yun politely denied having known. Bing then explained to the group why he had brought Yun. He was a remarkable officer capable of solving mysteries and handling difficult cases. One of the guests admitted in surprise that he had heard Yun possess supernatural spiritual abilities, which drew even more attention to him. Bing's sister began speaking softly, saying that in the past, she had experienced a very strange incident and was curious to see if Yun could uncover what had happened. Yun listened carefully to her story, then quickly spoke up, demonstrating his understanding of the event. He referred to the couple who ran a fabric shop and suffered a tragedy while visiting relatives. Suddenly, asked her whether the husband had actually killed his wife. Bing's sister was deeply shocked by Yun's words, wondering to herself how he knew so quickly and how he could reveal such a detail without hearing the full story. At that moment, Yun smiled confidently to himself, realizing that the guests were starting to genuinely believe he had spiritual abilities, though he was really just relying on sharp observation and analysis. Yun thought that in situations like this, it was better to impress the crowd with quick deductions so they would believe he had extraordinary powers. He continued reasoning to himself that this approach often led people to exaggerate his abilities themselves, and sometimes suspects would even confess out of fear of being exposed. Yun then turned to Bing's sister and gently apologized, saying he was simply surprised by the intensity of the story, which led him to immediately suspect a murder or something serious. Bing's sister resumed her story calmly, explaining that the couple had stopped at a small inn for the night during their journey, but a strange and unresolved tragedy occurred there. Yun fell into quiet contemplation and began analyzing the possible motives for the crime, stating that the killer wasn't the husband since common motives like theft didn't apply in this case. He felt the need to present a logical and quick explanation to maintain the image others had formed of him even though he hadn't yet heard all the details. Bing's sister was shocked by Yun's confidence in words, wondering how he could know such precise and clear details about a story he hadn't fully heard before. Yun continued speaking, explaining that he initially suspected that one of the couple may have killed someone and tried to hide the crime. This surprised her even more as she hadn't shared any details yet. Yun stood confidently in the center of the room and explained that his deduction came from the fact that the couple was on their way to visit relatives, so the husband might have felt jealousy or anger after a conversation that occurred. Bing's sister was amazed by Yun's speed and accuracy in deduction. She asked him how he knew that. Yun kindly replied that it was simple. Someone like her from a noble family like the Bings must have a good reason to ask about the case. Bing's sister smiled humbly and admitted that despite her family status, she lacked wisdom in such matters. Then she asked for his opinion on what should be done with the husband. She explained that the local judicial officer wasn't competent, and the case was closed quickly without even questioning the husband, which made Yun pause to think. After a moment of thought, Yun asked who discovered the wife's body and where it was found. Bing's sister answered that it was the husband who found her in the nearby forest. Yun sensed something odd, saying that if he had led the investigation, he would have focused on the husband and interrogated him thoroughly since he was the one who discovered the body. Bing's sister told her brother he had done well to bring a policeman of such skill and said she was pleased with Yun's analysis. She then suggested telling him more details. She added that they had solid information about the location of the treasure hidden by the divine thief with the white face, explaining that they had gathered several recently surfaced maps to pinpoint its location. As she reviewed the maps, she thought in amazement that Yun was far more skilled than she had expected, perhaps truly a gifted individual. Bing's sister then revealed that the treasure was hidden in a mountain stronghold located in Mount Baljeon, an area controlled by mountain bandits. At that moment, Gok intervened, saying he doubted the credibility of such rumors and asked Bing if he truly believed those secret martial books were there. Bing replied that they had nothing to lose by checking for themselves. Yun and the rest of the group stood in deep thought about the site and the possible treasures hidden there. Yun suddenly felt a wave of tension, wondering what was really happening in this mountain stronghold and why everyone seemed so anxious about it. Shortly after, the group set out for a location, moving cautiously and staying alert as they walked along the forest path. As they walked, Yun was annoyed by the insects swarming the area, but suddenly someone from the group shouted at him angrily to stay away, which greatly startled Yun. In a flash, one of the bandits threw a knife toward Yun and his companion, forcing them to retreat quickly to dodge the attack. Bing's sister noticed how quickly Yun and his companion reacted and commented in surprise that their speed rivaled that of a trained warrior. Gahk found a note on the ground, picked it up quickly, and read it aloud to everyone. It contained a clear death threat, warning them to turn back, signed by the group Norkium. Some of those present began questioning the boldness of the bandits using the name Norkium, and they felt they needed to act quickly to confront them. Yun approached Bing's sister calmly and asked her about the martial skill level of these mountain bandits. She replied that they were usually poorly trained and low level. She added coolly that their leader might be class at best, trying to reassure the group. But Bingju suddenly declared that they are coming, and everyone began to hear the clear sound of approaching footsteps from the bandits. Yun felt panic rising as he suddenly realized the attacking bandits weren't just amateurs. They were all well trained in martial arts. Stopped for a moment watching the advancing bandits and tried to quickly analyze the situation to make the right decision. But as he thought, he was surprised by another violent attack from someone whose strength far exceeded previous estimates, which filled him with concern and intense tension. Yun began using his spiritual abilities heavily to focus on the incoming attack, trying to calm himself and find the right opening in his opponent's assault. In a decisive moment, Yun spotted a clear weakness in his opponent's movement and seized the opportunity, launching a precise counterattack. After Yun landed his surprise strike, the mountain bandit became furious and screamed, threatening that Yun would pay for what he'd done. Yun was surprised and unsettled because he had thought his strike had landed effectively, but he quickly realized it hadn't truly harmed the enemy, only enraged him. The bandit prepared to launch a strange technique, and Yun noticed the opponent's energy flow had suddenly changed, prompting him to wonder whether the next move would be more dangerous. Yun was shocked by the sheer scale of the technique the bandit was preparing, and he began to suspect it was a hidden or secret technique. The bandit lunged at him, yelling in anger that he would kill him. Yun found himself with no way to retreat, so he decided to face the attack head-on. Yun gathered his strength and braced for the clash, fully aware of how dangerous the situation was and that he could be seriously injured. The two collided in a fierce impact, and Yun unleashed his latent spiritual power at full force to block the bandit's attack. Yun felt intense pain in his body due to the immense pressure on his lower energy center and the pressure points he was using, which caused his internal energy to shake violently. Normally, Yun would have avoided such a clash, but this time he had no choice but to stand his ground and fight with everything he had. Finally, Yun managed to deliver a powerful blow, pushing the bandit away from him with great force. Yun stood catching his breath, exhausted, and reflected that using this type of energy in a real battle was extremely dangerous, but he felt relieved that he had overcome his opponent. At that moment, Yun heard his companions calling out to him with great concern, and he quickly turned to them. They rushed toward him and asked if he had defeated all the mountain bandits. Yun told them that the one wielding the strange weapon, a trident, was the only one left. Then his companions pointed at the defeated bandit and were shocked to learn that Yun had faced and defeated such a dangerous opponent alone. Yun tried to be modest, saying he had simply been lucky and had used a special martial art called Gomyongjulcho, but his companions praised him and insisted that in deadly battles, there was no such thing as luck. Only strength mattered. Bingju laughed heartily and praised Yun, saying he hadn't expected him to use such a hidden technique. He joked that the people of Hanseong would feel perfectly safe with someone like him around, though Yun felt slightly uncomfortable with the exaggeration. Suddenly, everyone felt the presence of a terrifying energy that made them freeze in place with shock and fear. Yun realized that someone extremely dangerous had arrived. From between the trees emerged an old man known as Cold-Handed Snake, Go Shen, a notorious villain famed for mastering terrifying demonic martial arts. Bingju became uneasy and immediately realized that Go Xian was no ordinary man. He was well known as one of the most powerful fighters, so feared for his demonic skills that others avoided him entirely. From the aura Go Shen exuded, Bingju realized that he had reached an extremely high level of martial cultivation and would likely be too difficult for them to handle. Bing cautiously asked Go Song why he had come to this place, but Go Song remained silent, staring at them coldly. Gok tried to diffuse the tension, saying they had only come for Yun and had no intention of disturbing him. But Go Song replied coldly that if they wanted to die, they could all die together. Jiok pleaded with Go Song in the name of the Bing, Jogi, and Tang families to spare them, but Go Song merely let out a mocking laugh, rejecting the plea. Go Song coldly asked whether they were the ones who had killed his men. Bing cautiously asked in return whether those bandits truly belonged to him. Yun stepped in calmly and asked to speak frankly. He then pointed out that these bandits might not have originally been Go Song's followers, but newly recruited ones. With sharp insight, Yun explained that the bandits' clothing and weapons clearly showed they weren't original subordinates of Go Song, but likely new recruits from his mountain stronghold. Yun continued confidently, saying it was likely Go Song had given them orders after his recent visit to the stronghold. Go Song finally acknowledged Yun's explanation, but then turned to Bing and the others with a provocative question, asking why they had brought a police officer with them on this mission and whether they had been arrested or were involved in something illegal. Go stood silently, mocking himself after realizing he had fallen for Yun's trick. Yun noticed his expression and realized that Go Sung had indeed fallen into the trap. Go Sung said with clear sarcasm that he had never heard of an honest upright policeman, but he admitted that Yun must truly have spiritual abilities that allowed him to identify the bandits so easily. Go Sung turned to Yun and asked if he knew the reason he was staying in this mountain stronghold. Yun responded with sincere enthusiasm, saying he genuinely wanted to know. Go Sung answered seriously that the reason for his presence in this place was the secret clue left behind by the divine thief with the white face, which caused a wave of shock to appear on everyone's faces. He added with a mocking smile that Yun and his group certainly knew about these rumors. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to such a remote location in the place. Go Sung continued, explaining that he had spared the lives of the mountain bandits so they could serve him, but he grew tired of them when they started acting like members of the Norkian gang, and they ended up dying miserably. Then he turned to Bing and said that although Bing had begged in the name of the three great families, he couldn't afford to oppose them easily, though his tone clearly carried a threat. Everyone instantly felt the looming danger upon hearing Go Xiang's chilling tone and realized the situation had become extremely dangerous. Go Xiang continued his menacing words, calmly stating that he would kill them all to prevent the secret clue from spreading. Everyone was deeply shocked and anxiously wondered if Go Sung was serious about his death threat. He answered with chilling calmness that he was indeed seriously considering it. Go Sung explained that if he let them live, they would surely try to seek out the secret clue again, which would pose an even greater threat to him in the future. He added sternly that there was no way he could believe their promises not to search for the clue again. Go Sung then exploded in furious rage, declaring that it was obvious they had started believing in the rumors as soon as they saw him, so he wouldn't let them leave easily. Then he announced that they now had no choice but to find the secret clue and promised that if they did, he would let them live. Go Sung then approached the young man from the Jogi family and told him that the only reason he hadn't killed him yet was because of his intelligence, causing the young man great anxiety. The young man from the Jogi family asked in confusion how they were supposed to find the clue with only one map and asked Go Sung if he had any other evidence. Go Sung replied coldly that he only had this one map. The young man felt a wave of frustration and said anxiously that they desperately needed more clues when suddenly Yun interrupted and said he had already found the clue. Everyone was stunned by Yun's declaration and asked him in disbelief if he was really serious. Go Sung laughed loudly, mocking Yun's claim, and said he never imagined Yun's spiritual abilities could locate the secret clue without even moving from his spot. Then one of those present explained fearfully that Go Sung practiced forbidden martial arts, focused on violent combat techniques and rapid accumulation of internal energy. He confirmed that the martial arts Go Sheng used were extremely dangerous, allowing users to quickly gain great power but struggle to maintain balance and stability. He added that this imbalance made it difficult to reach the highest levels of strength, but even so, Go remained an extremely dangerous fighter. Bing began to feel the gravity of the situation even more and admitted that his previous estimation of Go Sung's power had been wrong. They were facing an opponent far stronger than they had assumed. Go Sung then screamed furiously at Yun, declaring that he knew every corner of this place and that it was impossible for Yun to have found the clue without taking a single step. At that moment, Yun calmly asked Go Sung a striking question. Could it be that the divine thief with the white face was originally from this region? Yun's words left Go Sung stunned and made him suddenly freeze in place. Go Sung took a step back in shock and asked Yun with great surprise how he had come to know that information. Yun calmly and intelligently explained that Go Sung's long stay in this area and his intense interest in it clearly indicated he believed the divine thief was a local. Go Sung finally admitted that Yun was right and in a low voice said he remembered the thief's words that he had hidden everything he stole in his hometown. Go Sung clearly recalled that meeting with the thief who had said he wasn't referring to gold or other treasures, but to the secret clue itself. At that moment, Go Sung realized that the clue was the only thing worth risking all this trouble for. Go Sung continued speaking, mocking how even ordinary people had managed to deceive him. Then the thief confidently stated that he indeed possessed the famous Brahmana manuscript. Go was deeply shocked and asked in clear astonishment how he had managed to obtain such an extremely rare scroll. He explained that Brahmana martial arts were rare techniques practiced by Tibetan monks known for their unique ability to purify internal energy. Go Sheng privately admitted with great concern that this manuscript could be crucial to his own secret martial arts, especially given his need to stabilize his unstable internal energy. The divine thief boldly claimed that he had stolen the manuscript from the secret Shaolin library and that the monks never even noticed it was missing. He then offered to sell the manuscript to Gao Xian for an enormous sum. Gao Xian hesitated briefly about killing the divine thief immediately, but the thief defiantly said that if he died, Gao Xian would never find the manuscript and certainly wouldn't be able to enter the secret library himself. When Go Xian asked the thief what he wanted in exchange, the thief replied with a mocking smile that he wanted nothing, but that he wouldn't hand it over easily after being previously insulted by him. The divine thief proposed a new deal. If they met again in 10 years and he was still alive, Go Song would have to apologize and only then would he receive the manuscript. Go Song reluctantly agreed and asked the thief where the manuscript was in case he died before the 10 years were up. The thief told him he had hidden all his treasures in the fortress of Baosangche. Years later, the divine thief with the white face died in a miserable and mysterious way, prompting Go Song to rush to Baosangche fortress in search of the manuscript, but he found no trace of it there. Returning to the present, Gao Xian looked at Yun with genuine awe, wondering how this young Bagui had come to know all those precise details. Yun spoke calmly to Jiuk, saying that when he saw the steep cliff and strange birds nearby, he remembered an old and mysterious case with similar conditions. He began explaining that in that past case, the bodies of fighters were found at the base of a high cliff with no clear reason, leading him to suspect there was something valuable hidden on the cliff. Yun added that the real cause of the strange incident was a terrifying bird that built its nests using hard materials like stone. Then he asked rhetorically what kind of person would place a secret manuscript in such a dangerous place, concluding that it could only be the work of the divine thief with the white face. He went on to explain clearly that this proved the divine thief was a local and that Go Song was obsessed with this place because he had heard it directly from the thief. Yun asked Go Song to turn and look at the cliff, then asked whether the mountain bandits had always avoided going near that particular spot. Yun explained that the reason for this fear was a creature known as the stone-gathering bird, which killed its prey by dropping rocks on them. Everyone listened intently. Yun clarified that the divine thief was certainly aware of this bird and its bizarre habits and had therefore chosen to place the secret manuscript in one of its nests for safekeeping. Go Sheng could hardly believe what he was hearing and shouted in shock, asking if Yun really meant that the nest was the hidden clue. Yun confidently confirmed that was exactly the case. Yun then asked Go Song to carefully observe the colors of the nests on the cliff, pointing out that one of them would be noticeably different in color and shape. Go Song looked up and indeed saw a nest that clearly differed from the others, filling him with excitement. He quickly moved toward the cliff, climbed up, and managed to retrieve the nest Yun had pointed out. Go Song looked at Yun with deep gratitude and shouted, "You saved me, Bagui." Yun responded with modesty, saying he didn't deserve such praise. One of the companions expressed concern that Go Song might betray them, but Yun calmly replied with confidence that he wouldn't because his spiritual eye had shown him the sincerity in Go Song's intentions. Yun continued silently to himself thinking that Go Song wouldn't risk angering the Shaolin clan or the rest of the 5 great families just to kill them. Gao Xiang then handed Yun a gift, a strong whip he had used earlier to pull down the nest, saying it was a small reward for him. He explained that the whip was made from ultra-durable fibers and soaked in a powerful poison, advising Yun to use it only if he truly needed to save his life. Then Go Song left a closed book on the ground saying he had already secured the real secret manuscript and no longer needed this fake version. And in an instant, Go Song vanished at incredible speed, leaving everyone standing in shock at his sudden disappearance. Yun's companions continued to wonder why he had refused both the whip and the martial arts book despite how useful they were, especially since they didn't belong to traditional martial arts schools. But Yun calmly explained that the book Go Song took from the nest was most likely just a fake copy, which surprised everyone. Yun continued his explanation, saying that while observing the area, he had noticed several similar nests, and the presence of only one differently colored nest seemed deliberate to hide the real manuscript. He then clarified that the white-faced thief had been hunted by the Nanjing family, making it nearly impossible for him to enter the Shaolin library. That meant the manuscript he claimed to have stolen was fake. Yun added that the thief likely created the fake copy on purpose to deceive pursuers like Go Song. After inspecting the book, one of the men confirmed Yun's assessment, noting that its contents were simple martial arts from minor families with little real value. Another man spoke up to say that there were no techniques from any of the 9 great clans, and he declared that he would return the book to its rightful owners. Jiuk gently asked Yun if he knew why the thief had gone to the trouble of making a fake manuscript. Yun replied that he hadn't thought much about it yet. Jiuk suggested it might have been due to the thief's pride and wounded ego after being mocked by others, but Yun had a different view, saying the thief may have been ashamed to admit he never possessed the real Brahminate manuscript, so he made a fake to claim that he did. Jiuk admired Yun's reasoning and laughed, saying that it made perfect sense and that he had heard rumors the true Brahminate manuscript was in the possession of the Namgong family. Bing and his sister jokingly wondered if the thief had actually tried to steal it from the Namgong family and said it made sense that no one would believe such a thief's word. After the conversation ended, the group decided to head back and began their journey home together. That night, Bing approached Yun and kindly told him he had a special suggestion regarding his training. Yun listened with great curiosity. Bing asked Yun to show him a move from his martial arts to assess his level. Yun responded enthusiastically and demonstrated one of his techniques. Bing was very impressed with Yun's movement but noted that the flow of energy in his body seemed weak and needed more internal energy. Yun admitted honestly that he felt the same but didn't know how to fix it. Bing smiled and said there was a way he could boost his energy. Yun wondered nervously whether Bing was referring to one of the secret heart techniques, but he was worried about being given something so rare. But Bing surprised him by taking out a Jeju pill, one of the core treasures of the Bing clan, which left Yun absolutely stunned. Yun asked in great confusion whether it was really appropriate to accept such a priceless treasure, but Bing reassured him with a smile that it was completely fine. Bing explained that the pill was crafted using his family's secret technique and would grant the user internal energy equivalent to 10 years of training. He assured Yun there was no issue in taking it despite the secrecy of its creation, as he had obtained it legally and it was meant as a reward. Yun hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he decided to trust Bing and quickly swallowed the pill, immediately feeling a massive surge of energy flowing through his body. Yun felt the energy circulate smoothly through his body, filling all his channels and pressure points without causing pain or damage. According to what Yun knew, consuming such a pill equaled 10 years of intense training, but only if the energy was properly absorbed. However, he also knew that fully absorbing the energy wasn't easy and required a high-level heart technique to store the energy effectively. But even though Yun used only a modest level heart technique, he amazed everyone by absorbing the massive energy directly and effortlessly, which left all those present in awe. Bing was astonished when he noticed how easily Yun absorbed the massive energy from the Jeju pill. He wondered to himself whether it was because Yun's upper Dantian center was already open. Yun smiled gratefully at Bing and thanked him warmly, noting that he felt exhausted but completely refreshed and that the sensation was entirely different from before. But Bing grinned slyly and told Yun to get ready. He needed to adapt quickly to the new energy by moving around. Yun tried to object nervously, saying he couldn't even move his body properly at the moment. Bing laughed at his words and told him what he was feeling was just a trick played by his own body. Yun made a unique foot movement that clearly caught Bing's sister's attention. Yun was stunned when he suddenly began moving at high speed without realizing it. After a short but intense training session, Yun collapsed to the ground, exhausted and amazed at Bing's incredible strength. Bing's sister approached Yun and gently asked if she could pose a question. Despite his fatigue, Yun immediately agreed. She asked about the movement he had just used, saying it was different from the traditional Weehawk style she knew. Yun quickly explained that he had combined the White Snake step, which he learned from Jiao Xiang, with Wegok movement. This surprised Bing's sister, who couldn't believe it was possible to combine techniques so easily. Yun jokingly told her that those with an open upper Dantian center often die young, which made Bing's sister feel embarrassed and quickly apologize. She smiled as she offered Yun an old book, saying it was of no use to her, but might be beneficial to him. Yun was shocked to learn that the book came from the Taoist path and that Bing's sister had received it from a master of Wudan. She explained that the book wasn't about martial arts, but rather an external art from a sect known as Bao'an-mun, which had found its way to Wudan under special circumstances. Yun hesitated to accept it, worried that it might be too important, but Bing's sister reassured him that she had received it as a reward for helping someone in the past, so it was fine to pass it on. She admitted to Yun that she had tried to learn the technique in the book but had failed, so she felt it was better to give it to someone like him who might be able to use it. She smiled and advised him to study the art well, clarifying that it wasn't dangerous, more like a spiritual summoning technique. Yun nervously asked if it involves summoning ghosts, but Bing's sister laughed and explained that it drew slightly on the energy of immortals, not spirits. Yun began reading the book, but quickly felt frustrated by the extremely complex characters and symbols, thinking he wouldn't be able to understand it easily. But in a pivotal moment, Yun used his spiritual eye and was able to read the text with complete clarity, causing a massive influx of information to flood his mind. Yun was astonished to discover that the technique in the book drew energy from the Southern Big Dipper Star Lord, one of the immortals, making it a very powerful technique. The power of this art could greatly enhance his internal energy and endurance after just one use, and it consumed far less energy than using his spiritual eye. After grasping the technique quickly, Yuan excitedly told Bing's sister that he now understood how to use the energy borrowed from the immortals. But before Yun could test the new technique, Bing kindly asked him to continue training a bit more, which made Yun feel a bit anxious from all the practice. The next day, Yun returned to the city looking completely exhausted. His coworker asked if he was all right. Yun quietly replied that he was fine and thanked his colleague for covering his duties while he was away. The colleague kindly responded that there was no need to thank him as he expected Yun to become someone important in the future. Despite this, Yun remained humble and said he was still far from his goal and that his path was still long. But deep down, he smiled and affirmed that he aspired to become a high-ranking official, a judge capable of gathering fighters and founding specialized training academies. It was an ambition that seemed a bit strange at the time. Yun continued his conversation with his colleague, Bong Wei-yo, who explained that there was a good opportunity for him to become a Bodo chief investigator, especially since the others in the group were inexperienced and not impressive enough to gain the judge's favor. From the judge's perspective, having a smart Bodo like Yun would be ideal. Yun seriously considered his colleague's words and wondered to himself whether he could really become a Bodo if he kept up his current performance, but his colleague warned him that the other Bagui might feel threatened and try to get rid of him if he rose through the ranks. Yun replied sarcastically, asking if he was supposed to take care of another Bagui this time as well. His colleague panicked and said that was insane and unacceptable, while Yun thought he was being dramatic and overreacting. Then Yun seriously considered bribing the judge, but remembered that he had no money. So he decided the only way to achieve what he wanted was to prove his ability and competence genuinely. Suddenly, female voice called out to Yun from behind, addressing him as Da Yup, which startled him, and he turned to see who it was. A beautiful and mysterious woman appeared and said with a soft smile that she hadn't expected to run into him here. Yun tried to remember who she was and asked himself in confusion who this woman could be. After a quick moment of thought, Yun remembered that she was the same Ji Sang he had met earlier, but he noticed that her features looked slightly different this time. Yun laughed awkwardly and apologized, saying he hadn't recognized her right away because of a small change in her appearance. This made his colleague, Baguio, nervous and quickly warned him not to say such things. Yun hesitated for a moment, finding it difficult to comment on the appearance of a woman who might be connected to a powerful figure, and realized that her luxurious outfit clearly indicated she was not just an ordinary gooseneck. Yun quickly clarified to the woman that he had simply been in shock the time they met and hadn't remembered her face because of that. She accepted his apology kindly and said she understood. The woman then calmly said she had come to Yun to request a favor and politely suggested that he accompany her. Both Yun and Bagui felt clearly uneasy about the sudden request. Bagui whispered in Yun's ear, warning him not to go with her. Explaining fearfully that going with her could lead to his death, Yun nervously asked why he was warning him. Ano replied with clear concern that the city was very large and home to secret dark organizations and that this Ji Sang was probably connected to one of them. Continued explaining his concern, saying that the woman might ask Yun to cover up a murder, which would be extremely dangerous. Meanwhile, the woman overheard their conversation and looked visibly bored and uninterested. She thought Yun was hesitating because of some petty excuse or fear. Bagui convinced Yun to go with her to find out what she wanted, but asked him to come up with a quick excuse to withdraw and return if necessary. Yun reluctantly agreed to O's suggestion, but chuckled and said he should go with him just in case so that if something happened to one of them, the other could avenge him. Quickly left, and Yun shouted angrily after him for abandoning him. Yun then asked the woman directly and very bluntly whether she really wanted him to cover up a murder. She replied calmly that she wasn't here for anything like that. Yun suddenly felt a strong spiritual energy coming from the woman, which triggered his spiritual eye automatically. He was surprised by how his ability had evolved. Through his spiritual eye, Yun saw that the woman's face was subtly shifting and that her voice carried a hidden power, which amazed him. Yun cautiously and quietly asked the woman if she was a member of the secret organization He-Man. He-Man was a mysterious group made up of powerful fighters. Its core members were Gaziangs and Diviners. It was often underestimated because of its outward appearance. The woman smiled calmly and confirmed that she was indeed part of He-Man. She politely introduced herself as Li Jiao, known as the Flourishing Phoenix, and asked Yun how he had discovered her identity. Yun lightly smiled and explained that he had noticed her face-changing technique, Yok Young Soul, which altered facial features using internal energy. Their conversation caught the attention of nearby passers-by who began whispering rumors about powerful figures from noble families, greatly irritating Yun. Li Jiao concluded by saying that she had chosen Yun specifically because of his exceptional intelligence. Yun began to think that maybe the situation wasn't as suspicious as he had feared and wondered whether the case involved a murder or the theft of a treasure. Li Jiao spoke directly to Yun and told him that he was one of 3 people who had caught the attention of the courtesan, Hua Hui, and that it was his task to discover who her true lover was. This confused Yun a little. He was baffled by the strange nature of this request and thought to himself that he didn't really understand what Li Jiao wanted from him. Li Jiao explained the location they were headed to, Chungwell Row Hall, one of the most famous and luxurious pleasure houses in Hanyang. That entertainment house, frequented by high-ranking officials, was a vital source of income for the Homan clan. Yun sighed internally as he entered, sarcastically noting to himself that just walking into this place could be enough to lose everything he owned. He quickly recalled that he had dealt with similar courtesan-related cases before and that using his spiritual eye should be enough to determine whether someone was truly in love. Li Jiao led Yun inside and kindly asked him to follow her to the meeting room. Suddenly, Yun was shocked to see the Bing siblings already there, completely stunned by their presence in this particular place. Yun asked the siblings if they knew anyone from the Haoman group. The older brother confirmed that he did and that he had personally recommended Yun. Meanwhile, the younger sister firmly denied knowing any member of Haoman. The older brother smiled and explained that their presence here was purely coincidental, adding that people from righteous factions were usually cautious when dealing with Haoman. Li Jiao then asked them all to follow her to a hidden room within the building, which piqued Yun's curiosity about this mysterious place. She explained that the room was meant for hosting important guests, though it was rarely used. Li began to explain the details of the case they had come for, revealing that the famous courtesan Hua had fallen into a secret romance, which worried the organization, fearing she might run away with her lover and cause massive financial losses. Li Jiao asked Yun if he truly believed Hua Hui might run away. Yun calmly replied that courtesans who hide their love often behave this way. She then presented the three suspects, explaining that Hua Hui's behavior changed noticeably only around these individuals. The suspect was Zhong Yun, the son of a wealthy merchant known for his extravagance and financial wastefulness. There was Du Zhong, a distant relative of the Tong Graham clan, famous for his good looks and poetic talent, but lacking the money to free a courtesan. There was Huxon Wol, a deputy commander who held a high official rank, making him the most prestigious among them. Li Jiao asked Yun to observe the three suspects personally and determine who was the real lover. The Bing siblings expressed concern, asking if this task was really necessary for Yun, which made him angry, accusing them of being the reason he was caught up in this. Bing admitted that he thought the task would benefit Yun, but his sister objected, saying the matter was lacking in morals. The older brother insisted on helping Yun, warning that refusing a request from the Haoman group could bring serious trouble upon them. The siblings protested strongly, saying Yun wasn't the type to separate lovers. But Yun suddenly interrupted, saying Hua Hui wasn't in love at all. Yun calmly explained that the reason for Hua Hui's behavior was her desire to kill the three men, not love, as everyone assumed, shocking the Bing siblings. They tried to stop him from jumping to conclusions, but Yun asked them to be quiet and began to explain the situation in detail. Yun started explaining Hua Hui's true motive, revealing that the three men had previously killed a courtesan who had shown kindness to Hua Hui when she was young, driving her to seek revenge. Yun added that Hua Hui's plan was to poison the men with a sedative, then kill them and stage the scene to make it look like they had killed each other out of jealousy. In the end, Yun thought to himself that he had seen similar schemes before, and now he was about to expose everything clearly in front of everyone as if he had witnessed it all firsthand. Yun continued speaking confidently, saying that the fact all three men had become suspects simultaneously suggested that there was something else hidden beneath this strange situation. The Bing siblings asked nervously whether the idea of murder wasn't too extreme. Yun replied cautiously that the motive might be related to the courtesan's loyalty to the Haoman organization and that the courtesan might have developed deep personal grudges against the three men. Yun further explained that the three men apparently frequented pleasure houses together regularly, indicating their closeness, which would make it easier to kill them in a way that seemed natural. Bing was surprised and immediately suggested asking the courtesan directly instead of speculating, which made Yun wonder what exactly she had planned to offer the three men. With clear confidence, Bing said it was simple. All they needed to do was make the men wait a bit, but Yun suddenly noticed that Bing was preparing to use martial arts. Yun grew tense and asked Bing if he was seriously planning to use force in this situation. Bing laughed sarcastically and said that if the great hero, referring to Yun, wanted to rely on intelligence alone, he wouldn't interfere, but asked him to listen carefully to what he had to say. The courtesan Hua Hui was summoned. She began crying and openly confessed that she had indeed been planning to take revenge on the three men. Everyone was stunned by this candid confession, especially Li Jiao, who hadn't expected Yun's theory to be completely accurate. When Bing coldly commented that her reason was good enough to justify killing them, Yun was shocked and cried out, "What?" Bing simply explained his view, saying that in his opinion, killing those three didn't conflict with morality since they had caused serious harm in the past. Yun experienced a real inner conflict and began to think that those three would likely be killed one way or another because of their past deeds even if the courtesan didn't do it herself. Suddenly, Yun felt a strange spiritual energy begin to flow unexpectedly into his upper Dantian center, which shocked him deeply. Bing then gently asked if Yun had any advice that might help the courtesan. Yun replied in surprise, wondering how he could possibly come up with advice for such a situation. After a brief pause, Bing asked Yun directly what he would do if he were in her place. Would he have killed the three men himself? Yun hesitated for a moment as he thought through his answer. The entire room fell into stunned silence as soon as they heard his reply, and no one could hide the shock on their faces.